Hey folks, how's it going? All right, so this video is actually also about conflict. You might have noticed there was another video about conflict. That one was about conflict styles, and this one deals with types of conflict. All right, so there it is, types of conflict. So there are different types. Now, the styles, that's a separate video. This is the types of conflict. And this information is from your textbook, of course. Okay, so types of conflict. All right, let's take a look. First off, we've got simple conflict. This is conflict where two people or more are basically having a conflict over one particular resource or person or food. They're basically, it's the most simple kind of conflict, literally, that there is out there. There's two people or more people, and there's only one of that thing that they need. So, for example, with Twilight, the example here, there was a werewolf and there was a vampire and there was one human girl, and they both wanted to date her. So that's an example of simple conflict. If you're at work and you have a assignment due or a project due and you need to print it, and there's only one printer, and your coworkers also have something due at the same time, and everybody's fighting over the printer, that would be an example of simple conflict as well. So there you go. There's another kind of classic example. If you're roommates and you have pizza, and then it's the next morning and there's only one slice left over and everybody's hungry and there's an argument about who should get the last slice, that would also be considered simple conflict as well. So that's the most simple kind of conflict there is. There it is, classic, right? All right, now the next one is pseudo-conflict. Now, pseudo-conflict is where you think there's a conflict, but there really isn't a conflict. A lot of times here there is a misunderstanding, and so that happens a lot. Like if you ever watch situational comedies like Friends or The New Girl or The Big Bang Theory or any of those types of shows, a lot of times there's some kind of a misunderstanding, and then once the misunderstanding is cleared up, then people realize that there really wasn't a conflict. They just thought there was a conflict. So pseudo-conflict is where you think there's a conflict, and in fact there isn't a conflict. And in this example here, you might think, if you're an animal lover and you don't like it when people wear fur, you might think you have a conflict with this lady in the photo, but in fact she is wearing a fake fur coat, so there is no conflict. It's just, again, a misunderstanding. So usually through communication, you can clear it up. Like if, and it can happen, you see someone and they are, walking on the beach with somebody that's your enemy, and you think they're your enemy, but it turns out that the person you thought you saw was actually their identical twin or something like that. So any kind of a misunderstanding, that's the pseudo-conflict that's out there. So there you go. There's another classic. With Fight Club, for example, if you saw two of these guys fighting, you might think they really don't like each other, but in fact, they do. They're just in a fight club. So there's an example. And the next one is ego conflict. With ego conflict, what you have is a situation where there's no real conflict. I mean, it's not a misunderstanding per se, but the conflict isn't over a thing or wanting a scarce resource or a misunderstanding, but rather the conflict is because in some way the person has hurt your feelings or in some way tarnished your ego or bruised your ego, I could say. So for example, this example is from the movie The Devil Wears Prada. If your boss assigned, let's say you're very busy at work and your boss assigns a task to you, to your coworker instead of you. On one hand, you're happy because you don't have that extra responsibility, but then part of you might think, oh, maybe she thinks I can't handle it, or, in some way it's a slight, or she thinks I'm not going to do as good of a job as the other person. So your ego's involved. If you've ever had someone say to you, I really didn't have a problem with what you said, it was the way you said it, that can be a thing. That's the ego conflict as well. So a lot of times people hurt each other's feelings, and that's the main issue. It's not that there's any scarce resource or anything like that. It's just hurt feelings. So those are your types of conflict. There's the simple conflict, there's the ego conflict, and then there's the pseudo conflict. So all three are there. And if you have any questions, just let me know. Send me an email. All right. Hope you're doing well. Have a good day. Thank you. And 3 types of conflict.